You know, uh, you know that agonizing pause?
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows it.
Right. You're just standing there right in the middle of a conversation. Someone just asked you a question in English, and suddenly, like, time just seems to completely freeze.
Yeah, it's a very specific kind of conversational panic.
Exactly. Your brain is just frantically scrambling. You're taking their English words, translating them into your native language, forming this brilliantly witty response in your native language, and then desperately trying to translate that response back into English.
All before the other person notices you've just been staring blankly at them for, 5 solid seconds.
Yeah, the dreaded mental loading screen. Well, welcome to the deep dive, because today we are hacking that exact moment. We're unpacking some really fascinating insights from a conversation on the English with Ava platform. It's titled Mastering Fluency, The Art of Thinking in English.
And it's such a great piece of source material.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to completely solve this ultimate bottleneck in language learning. Like, we are getting to the bottom of how to eliminate that mental translation lag once and for all.
And, the core thesis of this source is incredibly striking, mostly because it completely challenges the default assumption that most of us have.
Right, because usually when people experience that lag, their immediate thought is, I need to get faster at translating.
Exactly. They think, I just need to drill more vocabulary so I can swap the words out quicker. We kind of just naturally assume fluency is just high-speed mental translation.
But the source argues the exact opposite.
It does. It argues that true fluency does not come from translating faster. It comes from stopping the translation process entirely. Like, you just have to start thinking directly in your target language.
Which is, frankly, a massive paradigm shift. But to understand how to actually stop translating, we first need to look at why we get stuck doing it in the first place,
Yeah.
right?
Why is this bottleneck so universal?
Yeah, because we all know that feeling of being 2 steps behind in a conversation, doing translation paperwork in our heads while the other person is already, moving on to the next topic.
Well, fundamentally, it comes down to how our brains handle cognitive load and working memory, specifically.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, when you're translating every single sentence in your head before you speak, you are adding this immense burden to a task that's already neurologically demanding.
Because your brain's working memory can only juggle so much at once. Right?
Exactly. It can only hold a few pieces of information at any given moment. So if you're using up all that processing power to retrieve a native word, match it to an English word, check the grammar rules.
A dreaded grammar check.
Right, and then plan the pronunciation on top of that. There is simply no working memory left to actually focus on the person standing right in front of you.
You're not really communicating at that point.
No, you're not. You're basically acting as a live, simultaneous interpreter for your own internal monologue.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that explains why it feels so exhausting. Okay, let's unpack this. It's kind of like, it's like trying to run a high-end modern video game through a clunky emulator instead of just playing it natively on the console it was built for.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the emulator has to translate every single line of code from one system to another in real time.
Okay.
Of course, it's bound to lag.
Yeah, it's going to stutter. The audio won't match up with the video.
The whole system is going to overheat. So when you translate in your head, you're essentially running your English through this, native language emulator.
That's exactly the mechanism at play here.
Yeah.
And just like an emulator drains processing power, mental translation just drains your mental energy so fast.
Yeah.
But the source material actually pinpoints a very specific psychological trap that keeps people stuck using that emulator.
Even when they know it's slowing them down.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the trap of perfectionism.
Okay, but hold on. Let me push back on that a bit. If I bypass that emulator, right? If I stop taking the time to carefully and, perfectly translate my complex, adult thoughts aren't I just going to sound like a toddler?
Yes. And that is exactly what people are afraid of.
Because that's a massive hit to the ego. It's genuinely terrifying to go from being this articulate, highly intelligent adult in your native language to suddenly speaking at the level of a 5-year-old in English.
It's an enormous ego blow. And honestly, it is completely understandable why adults resist it. Our whole identity is tied up in our ability to express ourselves intelligently.
Exactly. We want to sound smart.
Right. But the source material addresses this fear head on. In the conversation, Ava and Alex, they explicitly identify this desire for perfect grammar before speaking as one of the most common and, frankly, most destructive mistakes a learner can make.
Destructive.
Yeah. They highlight this concept that really reframes the whole goal of communication. They say that simple English spoken confidently is better than perfect English that never gets spoken.
Oh, man. Simple English spoken confidently is better than perfect English that never gets spoken. That's a tough pill to swallow for high achievers.
It really is.
Because we're totally wired to avoid sounding incompetent. But the source is basically arguing that embracing a bit of incompetence is actually the gateway to fluency.
Exactly. Because if you're waiting to formulate the absolute perfect, grammatically flawless, highly complex sentence in your head.
The conversation's already moved on without you.
Yep. You stayed silent, you
Yay.
protected your ego, but you completely failed to actually communicate.
Right. Perfectionism is the enemy of fluency here.
It is.
Yeah.
When you're holding out for perfection, you are heavily relying on that translation emulator because you want your English output to perfectly match the sophistication of your native language input.
You're trying to map this really complex native thought directly onto a complex English structure.
Exactly. But fluency is about connection. It's about the uninterrupted exchange of ideas, even if those ideas are expressed really simply.
So the practical solution here requires a temporary lowering of our linguistic ego, which brings us to the first real step from the source text. Start with simple thoughts.
Yes. Keep it basic.
So instead of agonizing over how to perfectly translate some nuanced thought like, I am currently experiencing a mild caloric deficit and require sustenance.
Which is how adults want to sound.
Right. But instead, we have to bypass the native language entirely and just think the basic underlying concept, like, I'm hungry, or it's raining.
Or I need some water.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to think in the very basic, almost primal building blocks of language.
Because by keeping the thought simple, you completely remove the need for that native language middleman to help you construct it.
Exactly. You can just grab the English words directly because the cognitive load is so low.
Okay. But if the goal is to keep our thoughts simple, where do we find a constant stream of simple, low-stakes concepts to practice with? I mean, we can't always have a conversation partner sitting around waiting for us to practice saying, I'm hungry.
Right, and this is where the source provides some highly actionable advice. Step 2 is to look around the room. Use your immediate physical reality.
Right. Your physical environment becomes your constant, built-in practice partner.
Yeah, the text emphasizes describing your physical surroundings in English as a core technique. Just looking around wherever you happen to be and attaching English directly to what you see.
So you look at your desk, and instead of registering it in your native language, you deliberately think, the room is clean, or my phone is on the table.
Right. You look out the window and think, the weather is nice today. It's entirely grounded in the physical space you occupy.
And then that naturally extends into the third step, right? Bringing English into your daily physical activities.
Yeah. The source suggests that whether you're cooking, walking, studying, or exercising, you should be talking to yourself in English about exactly what you are doing in that exact moment.
So you become the narrator of your own physical actions.
You're doing a live documentary voiceover of your own life.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to actually try this for a second just to see how it feels.
Okay, go for it.
So looking at my desk right now, I am picking up my pen. The pen is black. I am looking at the microphone. The light on the microphone is green.
You hesitated there.
I did. Okay, even just doing that right now, I could feel a tiny bit of friction. My brain instinctively wanted to identify the color green in my native language first, and I had to consciously block it and force the English word green.
That's the emulator trying to boot up.
Yeah. So I can see how doing this all day, narrating, making coffee, opening the door, walking down the street, that could be incredibly mentally exhausting.
Yeah.
Don't people just burn out trying to narrate their lives in a second language?
Initially, yes, it requires a ton of conscious effort, which is exactly why you felt that friction. But to understand why it eventually stops being exhausting, we have to look at the underlying psychology and biology from the source.
What's fascinating here is what you're actually doing in your brain when you narrate your physical actions, right?
Exactly. You are forcing your brain to create a brand new direct neural pathway. So think of your native language as this massive, paved, 8-lane superhighway.
You've been driving on it your entire life. It's totally effortless.
Right. But thinking in a new language is like standing at the edge of a dense, overgrown forest.
Oh, I like this. And translating is basically driving down that really comfortable highway, parking your car, and then taking a short, really difficult hike into the forest every single time you want to speak.
Precisely. It takes immense effort. But when you are holding an apple in your hand or looking at that green light on your microphone, and you force yourself to just think the English word directly, you are doing something profound.
You're attaching the English vocabulary directly to the physical sensory experience.
Yes, you are bypassing that highway completely and hacking a brand new path straight through the forest.
Yeah.
You are entirely cutting out the native language middleman.
Going straight from the physical object to the English word.
Exactly. So while hacking that path with a machete takes a lot of effort on day one, every single time you do it, you clear away a little more brush.
And eventually, that path becomes a dirt road, then a paved road, and finally, its own highway.
Yes. The direct association actually reduces mental exhaustion in the long run because you are eliminating the heavy cognitive lifting of translation.
You're training the brain's muscle memory. And that brings up a really crucial point from the source text that removes a lot of the intimidation factor here. Because in the conversation, Ava shares a personal anecdote about her own journey to fluency.
Which is so important to hear.
It is, because it's so easy when we listen to fluent speakers or language experts to just assume they possess some special innate linguistic hardware that we just don't have. But she openly admits that she wasn't born thinking in English.
No, she makes it very clear that this is an acquired skill, not a genetic gift. She describes this clear trajectory of struggle. Like, in the beginning, she used to translate absolutely everything in her head, just like everyone else.
She started exactly where a struggling learner is today.
Right. She had to force herself to think in those simple English phrases throughout the day. The, I am hungry, or the phone is on the table level of thoughts.
And she admits it was frustrating at first. It felt clunky and unnatural, just like my attempt to narrate the microphone light a minute ago.
But she points to consistent practice as the turning point.
Right. By doing it repeatedly, day after day, that overgrown forest path just got cleared. It became easier and eventually became her brain's default setting.
Which really highlights a fascinating distinction the source makes about how we actually interact with language on a daily basis.
Step 5, right. Building the mindset.
Exactly. It's the difference between a temporary study session and an overarching mindset.
Like, if I'm narrating my coffee brewing every single morning and narrating my walk to the bus stop, it stops feeling like this academic exercise. It's just part of my morning routine.
Which aligns perfectly with probably the most powerful quote from the entire source text. Do you want to do the honors?
Absolutely. So what does this all mean? The source synthesizes this entire philosophy by stating, fluency starts when English becomes a habit instead of a subject.
A habit instead of a subject. That is just so brilliantly put.
It really is. Because when you treat a language as a subject, you're treating it the way we treat, like, math or geography in school.
Right. You open a textbook, you study the grammar rules for an hour, you close the book, and you walk away.
You completely compartmentalize it. Your brain only turns on its English mode when you sit down at a specific desk with a specific book, and the exact second you stand up, your brain just defaults back to the native language highway.
And as long as you keep it compartmentalized like that, you will always be a visitor to the language. You're treating it as external information to be decoded rather than a tool for living.
But a habit is completely different.
Right. You don't study how to brush your teeth every morning. You just grab the toothbrush. It is totally integrated into your existence.
So when English becomes a habit, when you're automatically noticing the weather in English without prompting, or describing your breakfast in your head without even trying to be, that is when the translation lag truly dies.
Because the more you use English in these low-stakes, habitual, everyday moments, the more you prove to your brain that it is safe to exist in this new linguistic environment.
You don't need the safety net of the native language anymore.
Exactly. You are literally lowering the perceived threat level in your brain. You're telling your nervous system, hey, we do not need to panic and scramble for the native language. We can handle this reality perfectly well in English.
So we've really unpacked the mechanics here. We understand why the brain defaults to the native language. It's trying to manage cognitive load and, protect our egos from sounding incompetent.
And we know the translation emulator is a massive drain on our working memory.
Yes, and we know how to bypass it. By hacking a new neural path, keeping our thoughts remarkably simple, attaching English directly to our physical reality, and shifting our entire framework from studying a subject to living a habit.
So now, it is time to put you, the listener, directly to the test.
Oh, yeah. The source material is very practical in this regard. It doesn't just leave the learner with abstract psychological theories. It ends with a very specific, actionable challenge.
The 10-minute challenge.
The 10-minute challenge. We are pulling this straight from the source text and bringing it directly to your life today. So here's what you need to do. For the next 10 minutes, starting the very second this deep dive ends, you must think only in English.
Absolutely no native language allowed in your internal monologue.
None. Zero. You are going to look around wherever you are right now, whether you're driving, sitting in your living room, or walking down the street. Describe your surroundings.
The sky is cloudy. That card is red. My coffee is cold.
Think about your plans for the immediate future. I will go to the store. I need to call my friend. Narrate your physical actions as you do them. Like, if you are washing the dishes, tell yourself you are washing the dishes.
All in English, without translating a single word first.
And as you take on this challenge, it is vital to remember the reassurance provided in the text. Do not worry about mistakes.
Right. Nobody is grading your internal monologue. If you use the wrong verb tense in your own head, or if you call a spoon a fork, absolutely nothing bad happens.
The sole goal of this 10-minute exercise is just to force your brain to practice that direct neural connection. You're training the brain to reach for the English word first, completely bypassing that native language highway.
Let the grammar be entirely messy. Embrace sounding like a toddler in your own head. Just keep the English flowing. It's all about building the muscle memory of direct thought.
Now, before we wrap up, there is a fascinating, much broader implication to all of this that kind of builds on the source material.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Right. Because we have been talking about changing the language of our internal monologue purely as a mechanical tool to achieve fluency. We just want to stop the conversational lag. But it raises a really profound question about the nature of thought and perception itself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, if language fundamentally shapes how we organize our thoughts and categorize the world.
Exactly. If the words we use influence how we express our reality, and if true fluency requires us to consciously switch off our native language and think entirely in English, does changing the language of our internal monologue actually change how we perceive the world around us?
That is a staggering concept.
It really is. If I am consistently narrating my life in English, noticing different details because the vocabulary structures are inherently different, am I experiencing my life slightly differently than I would if I were narrating it in my native language?
Like, by changing the language of my internal voice, am I subtly changing how I interact with reality itself?
It suggests a profound shift in mental architecture. You aren't just learning new vocabulary to slap onto the same old world. By building this habit, you might actually be learning an entirely new way to experience that world.
Oh, on that mind-bending note, we have certainly given you plenty to process today.
And the goal is for you to process it all in English. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take that 10-minute challenge seriously today. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and above all, keep thinking.
And the next time you find yourself in a conversation, remember, you do not need to run that clunky, lagging emulator anymore.
Just look at the world around you, keep your thoughts simple, and play it natively. Catch you next time.